up nicely. It's the Drew and Fuse Show. The Drew and Fuse Show. The Drew and Fuse Show. Yeah, they clean up nicely. Yeah.
Hey, party people in the place to be. Daft Punk's in the building. And Drew Pierce here from
Fusemania here, Cincinnati, Ohio.
One day we're going to actually have some kind of intro that makes sense.
Besides me going, hey, in some different rendition every time. But
they look forward to it.
Yeah, totally. I feel like I just saw you.
Yeah, I was not up in Cincinnati. We were online, FaceTiming.
Yeah. Been busy. You've been busy. You did some gigs this weekend?
This week in general is just an absolute crazy shit show. I'm just got off of a gig and rushed home to get this podcast going because the podcast never ends. And I played with a saxophone player today. It was cool. It was something a little different. Just playing some groovy shit.
Mr. Saxo Beat.
It was not him. I wish it was. But if you're not following us on Instagram, make sure to do so because I have been posting some behind the scenes stuff on the Drew and Fuse Show stories just there specifically. So make sure you go there. Check out the behind the scenes.
If you aren't following us on Instagram either, and you aren't following us on YouTube or subscribe to the page, you might want to, because we are going to be doing a giveaway here a week or so with some tech bags for your backpack. You might have seen Drew tease it on our social media, but we'll get to that at a later point. But a company essentially came out with a tech bag to keep all your cables wrapped up nicely that fit in your backpack. And we're going to be doing a little review on that. We're going to be giving one away as well. So make sure you're following the social medias. Also, if you haven't yet, make sure you head over to Direct Music Service and sign up because we are sponsored by Direct Music Service, and using the promo code Drew and Fuse Show will get you 30% off your first month of activation on directmusicservice.com. So make sure you head over there and check that out. If you're not already, what are you waiting for? Go do it right now.
What are you waiting
Pause
for?
the show. Go sign up.
Pause.
So also, we have an affiliate link in the comments below that is for the Photo Booth Supply Company. If you're in the market for a photo booth, use that link. It won't get you anything, but it'll help the show out. And Drew will send you a free t-shirt. Again, may or may not be used. We don't know.
But it's free. And I will send it.
It's free. Yeah. Also, go check out our friends over at clubcannon.com. Tell them Drew and Fuse sent you. Just like that. Just be like, hey, they sent us.
Just say we want to turn my parties up to 11 and they'll lace you up with some goodness. So,
and finally, that $700 million company that we started. And if it wasn't for us, nobody would even know about it. And we're still not sponsored by them. Liquid Death. We're not sponsored by Liquid Death, but we drink it because we need to murder our thirst.
Yep.
Tasty.
Cheers to them. And cheers to you.
We got a great... Oh, thank you. Cheers. Joop. We got a great guest for the show today, and I am excited to chat with him.
Super excited. This is a big treat for all you guys. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, he has a discography of more than 700 productions, remixes, mixed compilations, and a string of over 60 #1 Billboard Dance Club hits. He's remixed songs that are performed by Madonna, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Whitney Houston, Enrique Iglesias, Jennifer Lopez, Mary J. Blige, Celine Dion, Janet Jackson, and the Spice Girls. He is one half of the production team, Thunderpuss. He had a weekly show on Sirius XM BPM called 12 Inches of Cox. He's been Grammy nominated. He's someone Drew and I both consider a friend, and we love being around. Please help us welcome Chris Cox. Hey.
Check 1, 2, it's the Drew and Fuse Show. Check 1, 2, it's the Drew and Fuse Show.
Sorry, I heard
So
your
awesome.
musical intro, and I got all. I wanted to get in on the action there.
Live
I
remix
love that
right
intro.
there.
I recognize a lot of the location of your intro there. It's like downtown Las Vegas.
There you go.
Yeah, that was filmed. We were out there. We were hanging out with you for a little bit on that thing, and
I think I
when we were
recall
out
because
there.
I had to meet up with Warren, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just waiting for Jordan," and I just see these guys like dashing around the downtown area just with a camera. Like, what are you doing? Oh, they're just doing their thing. I'm like, all right. It definitely wasn't out of character, that's for sure. It stayed
Yeah.
very much on brand for Drew and Fuse.
And then Warren dropped me off at your house like a latchkey kid that
I know exactly. He's like, can you tend to him for a while? We have to. It's either here or the pound. So can you watch him for a while?
No, but that was great. I got to see you and do your live stream.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I actually
entirety.
brought you on
It was
this.
really
Yeah,
cool.
that's right. Because I was streaming that night. Yeah, and I got to see what you guys did during that. During that was that the photo booth expo, or what were you guys in town for?
It was.
It was like
Yeah.
okay, yeah, because I went to go. Warren said, "Yo, come to the party," and I've known you both individually, but I'd never seen collectively what you guys do with your live show. And I think I told one or both of you that night. I was definitely telling one. I was like, dude, these guys have really something good here, because you were both really entertaining as hell, and you're both kind of taking turns between, when somebody's DJing, the other one's kind of being the hype guy and working the room. And there was just a really good energy watching you guys work together. It was a very, very good time for sure.
That means a lot. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank
we really we did prepare, but we did not prepare for that. We basically 2 hours before we're like, oh shit, Chris is gonna be here. Wait, Warren, Kevin, we're like, oh crap, we better go prepare. So we went went in the booth, and we're like, a little hungover, and we were just kind of threw something together. But it was a lot of edits that I like to play, and then a lot of edits that Fuse likes to play. And we just made them a little bit more unique and threw them all together in a pot. So it was fun.
It was great, because it's hard when you're a DJ and you're playing for a bunch of other DJs sometimes, because some DJs are just like, let's see, either they're so jaded, or they've kind of already heard everything, so they're not going to be surprised or get anyone's attention. So playing for industry crowds is a little bit different of a gig, and can be intimidating. And yeah, you guys are super entertaining.
Thanks.
Thanks, man. Lots more to come on that. We're doing exclusive remixes, and we're just trying to build it. So that's hopefully season 3. We'll be able to have a little bit more on that. This is
Right
the
on.
second episode of season 2, though, so that's a while away.
Yeah, we did a couple more shows since then together, and usually it ends up in Drew and I both seeing who can try to burn each other the fastest, and then you got to recover.
Exactly.
So, one of the things we like to do on the show is start with a little bit of rapid fire questions, and they usually end up not being so rapid fire. And we've got a brand new segment video just for you that we're going to debut for this rapid fire question. So I'm going to play it real quick,
Okay.
and then we'll get started with some rapid fire questions. So here we go.
All right.
Hey, this is the king of pop, Michael Jackson. Drew and Fuse, let's talk questions. In fact, let's do some rapid fire. Now, I know these rapid fires aren't always so rapid fire, and that is okay by me. I got nothing but time. Now, let's look at the man in the mirror and get started.
Wow, you're not messing around with bringing the cameos, the all-star cameos. Look at that.
We're stepping up our production for you right here. We're making sure we
heat. I don't know if I heard this or it was just a random thought recently, but this is really horrible. Is this going to be one of those things that's edited or not? I don't know. To think right now that Michael Jackson, the real Michael Jackson, could actually look like one of the dancers in the Thriller video. Ooh, that's bad. Oh, is that what it is? Yeah, it was a meme. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
looked like
horrible.
total.
Yeah, maybe. I flew late last night. I'm a little on fumes today. So
You just were playing a gig out of town, right?
yeah. I was actually double booked in Atlanta this weekend. It was cool. It was like Atlanta Pride, and I did Saturday night at a place I did last year, and they wanted me to come back. And then about a couple weeks before I was going to come out, they were just like, "Hey, do you want to play Friday and Saturday night?" And I was like, cool. I've only done that maybe once or twice ever, where it was like, 2 nights special guest at a club, and it was really fun. Yeah, it was like a blast, and a bunch of other DJs I knew that were in town, and so there was like a good little hang. And yeah, this I'm in a really nice little stretch where it's been real busy, and I think, like Drew was saying, like a bunch of people I know got really busy this October, and I think it was besides regular events, but I think it was also a lot of people that still had stuff planned from spring when things were still up in the air. Everything was getting pushed, and October was like the month where summer's done, but we're not in the holidays yet. And so yeah, I just came back from I did Brazil, I was in Portugal, spent a night in London, then I just did I was somewhere before Atlanta, I forgot. And then I go to Phoenix this week and get ready for Palm Springs after that. And a Vegas thing is in there somewhere. And yeah, it just kind of like fall has been all right.
That's awesome. Glad things are picking back up for you, and you're getting back out there. And
Yeah.
traveling.
It was definitely brutal for a while, which had the streaming, which is going to remain something that I'm going to keep doing. But that's been that's like a constant. But yeah, getting on the road was kind of. It feels pretty good to get out and see the people again.
That's awesome. So one of the questions we have for you and for the listeners to kind of get to know you a little bit better is, and we'll get started with some of these not so rapid fires. Do you play instruments?
Yes. I started as a musician first. I started by playing. I started learning drums when I was like in middle school, but I started playing saxophone when I was 10 years old, and that actually carried me all the way through. And I came to. The reason I came to Vegas was I was on a full music scholarship for playing saxophone, and so I was a saxophone and woodwind major. So I played all the woodwinds as far as that goes, and then I started playing guitar at 14, which I still do. So I pretty much have woodwinds, guitar, bass. I can fake my way on on keyboards and synths, and I can pretty much play a majority of things that are thrown in front of me. Was never a brass player and was never a string player, but just about any other thing I can make some noise on.
Before
Awesome.
Vegas, where were you? Where did you come from before Vegas?
I was in northern Nevada, so I grew up in Carson City, which is the state capital of Nevada, but it's a little town in between Reno and Tahoe, and it was really small when I moved there when I was like in kindergarten or first grade, and some of the same people that I was in first grade with, I graduated high school with. Like there was only 2 elementary schools, 1 junior high, 1 high school. So it was a very, very small town. So coming to Vegas was like coming to the big city for me. Way back
Yeah.
the dark ages. Yeah. So West Coast, always been West Coast. Yeah.
Awesome. And you were on Record Box, correct? Were you ever on Serato at any point?
No, I skipped Serato. I was on the computer so much in the studio. I just didn't want to be a laptop DJ for the longest time, and really still wasn't until pandemic when I'd used Record Box to prep everything. But I was always a CDJ guy. Like I was vinyl until I was CDs, and then I stayed CDs. And when everyone was still going computers, I kind of stayed CDs. I kind of knew some stuff that was coming up, and so I just kind of stayed on it. And then I got on CDJs, from the very beginning. And I never did the Serato thing. And then I dipped my toe into Tractor just a little bit, but once again, just kind of stayed CDs until CDJs. Then I just ran files and a hard drive and sticks. And then it was during pandemic when I started streaming a lot that I just kind of I had a controller that I'd used for some some corporate things like that, but I'd never really use it in clubs. And during pandemic, I just started playing so many hours and so much stuff, and didn't want to take the time to prep files and do stuff. Plus, my players that I had here were older, so I just started playing on the controller. And then, a year and a half of that. Now, when I go out, I take record box. Depending on the club, if they've got the right gear, I take. I'll have my laptop with me, but I'll always have sticks with me. So if it's older or something isn't linked right, I'll go sticks. But if I can, I'll just throw my laptop, into the mixer and have everything pull up and control record box.
Yeah, I remember talking with Warren, and he was always saying how when you first met, he was watching you on the side, and you were just, controlling all these different stuff. And just knowing the both of you, you're both kind of wizards in that realm of, always being part of the new tech, and just have a lot going on. I mean, watching your streams as well, watching all the stuff you add in. It's cool.
Thanks. Yeah, just part of it's just out of, nervous energy and curiosity, and some of it just to, I get bored hearing the same music all the time, so I want to try to do something else just to keep the on the spur creativity. And and then some of it is just to add an element of, like, making it look like work, or just, I don't know, just trying to do something. Just having, it's really fun to have something else to play with, and then other things musically that you can do. And I've always been a fan of that. Back when I met Warren, I was playing in a club that I had 4 turntables and a sampler, because he said he would listen to me on the radio before he'd met me, and he kept hearing things come in. It's like, wait, how's he doing that? Like, because he was thinking he thought I was fake. He thought what he was hearing was fake, and there's no way this guy could have been live. And then he came down and saw me, and I'd have 3 turntables as I'm playing a beat on one and putting an acapella or scratching with one as I'm loading something else on another turntable, then pop over that, and then occasionally had a bank of samples on a sampler, and then dropping in other stuff. And I got that way because I heard a mixtape that somebody from New York gave me. It was like this cassette, and it was Little Louis Vega, and it was like this Saturday night dance party. It was a radio show mixtape, and I'm hearing a track on there that it was basically like a mega mix, and I'm going, this is amazing. How is he doing that? So I was trying to kind of copy what I heard on this tape. It was like a cassette tape that I just devoured and listened to every mix. And there was a couple tracks on there that were these crazy things where there's a beat and there's a bunch of samples being dropped. So I learned to do that live, and about a year after the fact found out that what I was actually hearing on the tape was a mega mix record that he was playing, and it was something that was produced that way. But I thought he was doing it live, so I worked on getting my skills up so I could do live mega mixes, not knowing that the whole time he was just dropping a needle on one record. So
I love that so much, because I think, with YouTube, back when we all kind of learned, there was no YouTube, there was no other way of learning. So you hear it and you go, oh, I got to figure out how the fuck to do that. And so I just love that story of just really diving in and just going, well, he obviously has 3 turntables, and your mind is like, I'm going to recreate this.
Because even producers, I mean, myself included, but tons of producers or musicians, you'd hear something and then you're trying to figure something out. But on the way to trying to figure that out, you make a diversion and you either accidentally discover something else, or you just become something else. I mean, there's all these legendary stories of like all the punk bands. The Ramones were trying to make Phil Spector records, and Nirvana was trying to make records like the Pixies and the Melvins, and like trying to kind of like go after something that but you didn't sit there and watch a guy go, here's how to make a Skrillex bass sound. You just hear something, and then you go in your own deep dive, but in that, you learn how to use your stuff, and then you end up making something that's potentially even cooler than what you were going for.
Right. And for all those that are listening, you still can do that. Believe it or not, you still can have that imagination. You don't have to just go down the YouTube rabbit hole. You still can,
or you can learn something. You can learn something on YouTube and then go, okay, now how do I apply that to other things? It's just like, I look at like production, like I never stop learning things, and I never stop. I'll still take courses. I'll still do stuff just because I still want to like keep putting more tools in the toolbox, and don't just like learn how to do one thing. Like, here's how to make this one sound, but like, okay, what why does it make that? And then if I apply some of those techniques to something else, what happens with that? Like there's nothing better than, whether it's a plugin or a piece of hardware, to just like start turning everything and seeing what happens. I know I'm not supposed to turn this all the way, but what happens? And then it's like, oh, that's really cool. Or wow, never do that again. That's horrible and that's ass. And so it's just so critical to like take the time to experiment and really get inside stuff, because that's how you learn, and that's how you get all the the if you're learning a language, that's how you learn all your different words and phrases. It's just you spend time with it and you get inside, just like it is with DJing. You take 2 tracks and you go back and forth, and you kind of go find every other way to mix in and out of something, or every other way to do a beat juggle, and then you can apply that to some other thing. And it's just so critical to just take the time to like not only just learn that one thing, but what's the essence of that one thing, and why does it make it so cool, and then how can I apply that to something else.
Happy mistakes, right?
Exactly. Oh my God, yeah, those are the best. Yeah,
Those are the best. Totally.
That's the best thing, when it's in the middle of the night and you're like trying to get it, and then suddenly something happens, even if it was a mistake. You're like, copy the MIDI to something wrong, or you do something and it's just like, what was that? Holy shit! What was that? That's like the greatest. Oh, that's the great happy accidents. That's that. Yeah, that's the greatest thing when that happens.
Well, we know you've produced a lot, and we want to talk to you more about that in a little bit. But do you have a favorite remixer or a producer over the years that has been, significant to you? It doesn't have to be like DJ wise. It could be.
Well, there's the people that got my fire lit when I first, was starting. So my heroes, when I first started, were like Shep Pettibone was like the reason that I wanted to start remixing, and Clavillas and Cole, and Eric Cupper's, work and his keyboard work, and a lot of the guys that were doing the, late 80s, early 90s house that was all kind of like getting under my skin. Those were all the guys that were just, there were the music producers, and then the dance and remix guys. They were the ones that just kind of drove me crazy.
Did you find these remixes, or how did this come about? It's fascinating.
Oh yeah, so Vegas, when I was really starting, like it only had Tower Records. There was no other stores, but I started finding out about some stores. I'd find out some magazines and things like that, and I would start to see things on charts or see articles about things, and I would like sometimes mail order for some things, or I found a couple other stores in other cities. And then I remember the first time I went to New York for I was on college radio, and I went to New Music Seminar, and I went to like a New York record store, and it was just like my jaw dropped, at all these like amazing records that I never saw, these labels, never saw anything. And so I remember just trying to buy, things or just like get as much info as I could. I mean, I literally, at the time, I wrote letters to labels. Like I remember trying to find a 12-inch for something that I just couldn't find it. I just wrote the label in New York, hey, I work on KUNV on the college radio station, and I've been trying to do, and then he just sent me a whole promo pack, and it was like the coolest thing, and then and so a lot of it was just really just, that the hunt. And then, eventually when I was in LA, there were more stores and things like that you could actually go into, and just but that was like, you weren't really getting help with other DJs unless they were friends with you, because back in the day, if there was only like, if there was a vinyl that was like really hot, guys would like obscure the vinyl, or they would like peel the labels off or put stickers on them so other DJs couldn't train spot and find out what that hot track was, because you didn't have a way to like make a copy and play it somewhere else. So there was like all these like weird things that people would do. Or if you were at a cool record store and didn't know somebody, you didn't have your boy at the shop, they would only get 2 copies of something in, and they're already being held for friends of theirs. So, the times I went to record stores going, do you have this song? And they're like, no, we don't have it, sorry. And then I'd buy a bunch of other stuff, or maybe they'd find out who I was, and then suddenly all the records I asked for kind of emerged, because I guess I was credible enough at that point. So, but back in the early days, there were a few magazines like, Dance Music Report and Rock Pool and a few things like that were covering this stuff. And I would just read the charts and read articles about stuff and not even know the music, but go, okay, how do I this song that's number one on all these charts. How do I find that record? And then I just, it was the hunt and the ambition and just, going for it.
I love
That's
that so
awesome.
much. Do you miss that from time to time?
Absolutely. There was so much excitement. I remember being at some record stores on the day that you knew UPS came in, and it was like a couple other DJs were there, and it was almost like that was like our community center. It's like you're talking and you're just kind of looking at stuff, but you know that you're really just there because you're waiting for the brown shirt to walk in because he's got all the new shit from New York or whatever. And so there was something about that where I'll tell you what I really miss about it. I miss going to other cities where I knew about the certain record store that was like the really cool record store there, and going there to just see what they had that was different, or even just to find out what was happening in the scene there, because that was always like how you'd find out what the cool parties or the cool clubs or the cool DJs or entire movements, because you'd have regional hits, and that kind of stuff doesn't exist anymore. Like everyone's playing the same stuff, everyone's pulling from the same stuff, and that part of it I really do miss. As far as the hunt for vinyl, like I don't need to see vinyl anymore. I've done enough years of it. I'm tired of it. But there definitely was that thing where it was like you're just so feverishly have to find like that one version, which kind of still happens a little bit. Somebody plays the thing on the BBC and there's no ID and everyone goes, but it lasts like 2 days before everyone knows what it is or has a re-edit or has something. Like there's no nothing is like special anymore. There is no more hunt. Now it's more just like, okay, everyone has all the same tracks, so now what are you going to do with those?
I feel like you can kind of go down a rabbit hole a little bit still on Spotify trying to find some stuff, but even so, it's harder and harder on there to find good stuff anymore.
Well, now it's just impossible because there's what's the data? Like there's on every 24 hours in Spotify, there's between 20 and 40,000 new tracks every single day. So there's going to be over 7 million new releases this year. So you can't possibly keep up. Before, I'd look at the Billboard dance chart and it was like the top 50 tracks and then a few other bubbling under things. And then you'd look maybe at a couple record pools and you could quickly suss out like look at a couple alternative charts, look at a couple hip hop charts, and you'd be able to kind of cover a lot of bases. Now, the volume is so much you just can't possibly. Yeah, you can go down endless rabbit hole because you could go Spotify, but then you could just sit there on SoundCloud one night and forget like Bandcamp. You could sit there for 5 weeks on Bandcamp and pull down so much stuff, and you're like, what are these mixes? Who are these people? Like there's just so much stuff out there.
Yeah, it's wild. Do you have a special moment within your career, or like a bragging moment or something cool that happened, or a memory in the DJ booth or anything like that that kind of sticks out the most as a kind of like a positive memory for you?
Yeah, there's definitely been a few the positive ones in the booth. When
Well, it can be funny. It doesn't have to be positive. It can be random.
Yeah.
It can be whatever you.
Yeah.
Well, those are always the more interesting stories.
Then let's do those. Like screw the positive.
So we're doing
We don't need positive.
doing an appearance at New York at the Roxy, and it was going to be a special surprise performance from Cher, and it was one of those things that was like it was so special and so private that like there was a line around the block and everyone knew about it. There was like a few thousand people there, and the way, but she was just going to come up, and it was like the middle of the night, and so there was a not a sound check with her, but it was just like her sound guy had come in and set up a whole separate mixer, and it was literally just a CD player. So there was the club sound system, and they set up a separate player and a CD player to play her backing track. And so the booth is up there at Roxy, and then the stage is in front of there. So you could feel like the anxiety or the tension and energy come as like it gets ready, and then you can see them clear the stage, and so everyone knows what's happening, right? So the whole crowd, all the focus there, well, they're staring right where I'm at in the booth. And then Cher walks out, and so I'm now looking behind Cher, but I'm seeing what she's seeing at the audience. And it is like crazy, like a crazy amount of people, and they're all just like she doesn't even say a word. Sound guy goes, hits the player, and there's nothing. There's no sound. And everyone just kind of looks, and there's nothing. And she's waiting, and they're waiting and waiting. Sound guys, and then you see him with like a flashlight in his mouth, and he's quickly checking cables, whatever. And it's literally, it was like a CDJ 100, like the old Pioneer units plugged into a Yamaha submixer, just with 2 channels up. And then I don't even know if her mic was even live, because I think it was just the whole thing was going to be just a lip sync. So goes and hits it again, and she turns around and looks and just has this kind of icy stare of death of like, what the fuck's going on? And everyone is just going, and I'm watching this guy just completely fumble the ball, and it just completely, and he doesn't know what to do, doesn't know why, doesn't know what is wrong. There's no sound coming out because he's patched into the main PA, and so is the DJ system, and he goes to hit it again, nothing. And she turns around and she looks pissed now. And so she, suddenly and she's kind of now just playing along. But she also, I don't even know if she had a live mic. I think she was kind of saying hi or something like that, or just doing something. But now the audience is like, okay, what's going on? What's going on? And I'm watching this guy, and then the guy just kind of like, I don't know what to do. And he walks behind me and leaves the booth. And so now I'm up there by myself, and the sound guy just left, and Cher's pissed right in front, and there's thousands of people going. I mean, though they don't care because they're just there watching Cher, but you don't want to piss her off. And so I just reach over and I just eject the thing, and I'm like, I don't know why we're not in the DJ system of this amazing system. So I eject the button, and right then she turns and looks right at me, and she's like, is this going to happen or what? Or is this going to fucking happen or what? And I had put the CD in. I'm going to go, yes, it's happening right now. And I didn't even know it. I had the pot up and I hit play. And the track starts and the place just goes crazy. And then her full vocal was on it. She ended up like lip syncing the whole thing anyway. And the place goes crazy. And that was the end of it. But it was just literally like to watch everyone's panic with nothing, and then literally watch everyone flee the area and just isolate and leave me up there. It was like, thanks, guys.
Oh my God, what a great story. I mean,
Yeah.
it sucks that I can't even believe they didn't give it to you in the first place. Like, what the fuck?
Oh, I know.
It's so secret
ridiculous.
or what?
Well, I think it's because, an artist of that caliber, they want to make sure everything is at the top pro level, and who's going to, not going to trust a DJ. You might as well you have to get a sound guy. And who knows? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of DJs that would have effed it up. So it's just like, but it was like such a simple thing, because it wasn't like they were running a tape or effects units or anything like that. But it was just, more often than not, there's more disaster moments like that,
And had you worked with her at that point yet? Like, did she know who you were?
Yeah. So did the first mix, but it was before the thing that was for the Grammy. That was like another thing. But it was funny because only got to meet her after the gig, like quickly, or just put along song. Got to take a picture with her, or just put her arm around and get a quick picture. But I had another meetup with her because did altogether I think 3 things for Cher, and there was the second song, maybe maybe the first song. So it turned in remixes, and she didn't like it. It got recalled. And it was like, no, Cher didn't like the mix. She wants it recalled. And it was like, gee. And it's like the most like, that's just like a sucky thing when it happens. And sometimes you get really positive feedback, or they want, here's what they didn't like about it. But other times it's just like, they didn't like it. Do something else. And it's like, all right, what do you do? So that like about
And this is an official remix? This is like
yeah.
an
It was an official
where-
remix. Yeah. So it came from the label, but it was for Cher, and then so the liaison. You're only talking to basically the label person and the manager, and so working on the recall mix, and about about 3 days, 4 days into that, one of my neighbors back in LA was like, "Hey, you want to go see Aerosmith tonight at the Forum?" I'm like, sure, yeah, whatever. And he's like, yeah. And he did something like his buddy worked there, whatever. And we got like a special pass, and literally got to sit, like there's the front row, and then they put down some production seats, some folding chairs, and got a backstage pass and got to sit and watch Aerosmith from like basically almost backstage, but I had a backstage pass and watching the thing. And as as I'm watching the show, I see there's this whole area to the side of the stage, and it's just massive, like A-list music industry and Hollywood people. So I see, John Bon Jovi's there, and Slash is there, and like a few actors, and I think Lance Bass was there from NSYNC, and there's a few other people, and I see freaking Cher is standing there, and I'm literally working on her project during that week, working on the Recall the Mix. And so I'm kind of just like not trying to be like a crazy stalker, but I'm just kind of like keeping my eye, but watching the show, whatever. And at one point, I see her duck and go backstage, and I'm like, I got a backstage pass. I can go back there too. So here's my chance. And I had that thing recently at Roxy, so we have so much to talk about, our old friendship. And so I go backstage, and there's these big kind of like long corridors. It's a sports stadium, and I went to like the restroom or whatever, and I'm just coming down, and I just see her walking down the hall towards me, and we're the only ones in the hallway. And I'm like, perfect. All right, so what do you say? And so I was like, hey, Cher, what's up? Chris Cox, Thunderpuss, how you doing? Oh, good. And I could tell she's just wanting to go back. I said, hey, you just recalled the mix, but want to let you know, working on the new one, and it's coming out good. And she was looking at me. She's like, great, don't fuck it up this time. And it just goes, and I'm like, okay, no problem, thanks, have fun, enjoy the show. But she was like cool about it. She wasn't being like, no, she was actually kind of being cool about it. She wasn't like, but she has the license to do that. She's Cher.
That's awesome.
Totally. And did that one end up going through, or
Yeah. So then that one, it was Song for the Law.
Yeah.
Actually, that project, just as a safety measure, ended up doing 2 mixes for the package of 2 different directions. Just kind of like, it could really go different ways. So there was like kind of a darker, harder one, and then kind of a more fluffy one. And they both ended up getting put out. So
that's cool.
That's rad. I definitely want to talk more about like some of this label production here later, but that's a awesome story.
Yeah, those are great stories. Yeah, keeping up with our not so rapid fire.
I noticed that. Yeah, the extended mix of rapid fire. Yeah,
it's all good. It's all good. So the DAW you produce with, you use Ableton, correct?
Actually, I probably use I use Logic and Ableton more. I probably spend more time in Logic, but I use both. And that's after years. I used Digital Performer initially for about 15 years, and then moved to Logic, then Ableton. But it kind of depends on the project. If I'm doing vocal tracking or more musical stuff, or anytime when I'm recording myself, playing instruments or with another musician, I'll definitely use Logic. If I'm doing something that's more loop based, quick ideas, things like that, it'll be Ableton. And it just kind of depends on the style of the music, and also just kind of what I feel like working with that day, just to sometimes change it up.
Do you have any favorite plugins that you use?
Favorite plugins. I mean, for all right, now I'm imagining my, so for just EQ, compression, things like that. I mean, FabFilter is still like, the pretty much the best as far as like EQs and things like that. Things for like, tools for mixing. For synths, I mean, Steve Duda and Serum. Steve Duda is a genius, and Serum still is hard to be topped. If I want something kind of more analog sound, for synth-wise, Diva, the Yuhi Diva is still really good for analog type stuff. The Towel stuff, Towel 60 or Towel 62, those are kind of like Roland Juno emulations are really good. The some of the Contact libraries are really good when I want either orchestral stuff or something that's just kind of something that I've never thought of, but it might be really interesting, especially for things that I've been doing pads and stuff like that. I've done some scoring and things like that, and Contact is really good for that. And I'm like trying to rapidly run through my looking at in my a sequence in my head. So yeah, I mean, there's
When-
just so many tools out there.
to sidetrack just a scotch, when you're scoring, are you? I've always been curious about that because I've always been, my parents owned a video store growing up, and I always just liked that aspect of it. And so I've always watched movies, and I've always been fascinated by that. Is it something you just kind of keep open and you're just watching the movie and playing along to it and getting ideas, or
That's
is that
part
the
of
kind
it.
of
So I
scoring
haven't
we're
done-
referring to? Yeah.
I've only done 2 full movies, and I've done some other smaller things. So I can't speak from like a massive years of experience, but there's basically 2 ways to go. One of them is you're working with somebody who just kind of trusts your thing, and you literally you're looking at the scene, and just like you do as a DJ, just like you do in life, watching something else, like what would help bring this scene home. If it's an emotional thing, where where does it need to go? If it's a tense scene, what can you do with sound that could make it feel tense? So part of it is kind of creating the emotion. But a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll have temp tracks in there. They'll have temporary tracks that if it's a director that has some idea, they go, well, we want this kind of song. So they'll have something in there already, and maybe it's a known song or maybe it's a library thing. And then you kind of listen to that and they go, okay, we want something, this embodies like the spirit that we have. And then you go, okay, how can I do something that's like that without exactly copying it, but make it hopefully better or something like that. So, and I've been in both of those situations. So some of it will just be like, here's something that is a placeholder. That's just what we like, or here's something that's a placeholder. I love this. I love exactly what it does. In fact, if you mess up, I'll probably just end up licensing this. Or here's where we need music. We need music from this SMPTE marker to this SMPTE marker, and then you view it and go, what's a piece of clothing that I can wrap this whole thing up in? And it's cool. I know I have a long way to go in that area, but what I've experienced so far has been really cool.
That's cool,
awesome.
man.
What do you think your biggest song or production of your career has been so far?
I mean, it's got to be Whitney. It's not right, but it's okay. It has to be that little thing there. I mean, that was the. It's
To that little guy in the back.
that little one there. I mean, obviously it's important because it was like the first really, really, really big hit, but it was just it wasn't just sales, but it's come up in so many things, and it's created kind of a legacy in itself. Like, I know, actually, I just got something when I was on this trip that I was recently in. When I was in Portugal, somebody texted me an article, and Rolling Stone called it it was like in the top 100 dance songs of all time, and specifically my mix of it. It was like number 75 of like the top 100 dance songs of all time. And then I think like back, it's kind of dating itself, but like Vibe magazine, it was like top 25 remixes of all time. And it's just been used a lot, and it's really been one of those. And just DJs will tell me that I can still drop at any party, and it works, and people sing along. And then the life it had, just RuPaul's Drag Race, being used for the big series finale or season finale, lip syncing, stuff like that. Like it's had a life that just keeps going and going and going. And obviously Whitney is just such an amazing legacy, as an artist, and to be attached to something that big, that's definitely got to be the biggest.
Yeah, I noticed that song of yours has, just on Spotify alone, it has 33 million streams. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah. It just and it keeps coming, which is like totally. It's cool because I'm kind of tied to that. So in my Spotify metric, I see things, but I will never. I mean, God willing, maybe I'll make something, but I'll never make something that tops that. So I don't even have to look at my metrics. I already always know what my number one song is of anything I do, and the most playlists and everything, because it just. But then everything just kind of, there's a huge number and then little baby numbers after that. So.
One of the ones that I played of yours all the time, I mean, from the time it came out, was the Donna Summer, the Love to Love You. That one I played all the
Oh,
time.
that's cool. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I forgot. God, I did that. Yeah, that was funny. I did that actually in Vegas, on my friend DJ Frankie's on his dining room table. I did a majority of the production on that because it was like on the road, and I it's funny. I forget about that one because it came out. It just there was a lot going on with the tour and all that stuff with that, and I totally forget about that one. That's cool.
Yeah, I
I'll
played
tell you
that one all the time.
the really cool part of that project, and the best part of that project, was getting to listen to the original 16-track masters that were done in Germany at Musicland Studio.
Wow.
So the original 17-minute version, and so you can hear at points when, like, Donna's singing a thing, or when she does like the moaning tracks, but then you can hear on the track when she walks to the door of the vocal booth and then starts speaking to Giorgio in German, before the door closes. Or you can hear like the shuffling of like the string players, and that was the coolest part of that whole project, was just literally listening and analyzing every single part of what made that record, and it was only a 16-track production.
He kind of touched on that on the Daft Punk thing, where I don't know a lot about it, but just from that little Giorgio part on that latest Daft Punk album, he talks about how he accidentally stumbled upon that keyboard riff, right? That he made from that.
Oh,
that
that's what they're
arpeggio.
talking about. That one they're talking about. That's I Feel Love. That's not Love to
Oh,
Love You,
okay.
Baby. That's I Feel Love. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got the whole story on that one too, because just all the time I got to spend with Giorgio and diving deep, and kind of already being a fan, but then also knowing his stuff, and then being a collaborator of his and working in his studio. But then there's still always these times when I kind of want to find out some questions, but kind of not wanting to be like, Chris Farley fan guy. Remember that time when you did that record? That was a cool record, So there were these times, and he never really wants to talk about like the old stuff that much. So there's a couple times, especially when we did the tour in 2013, when it would just be him and I at like breakfast, and because we're playing the old stuff, it opened up a few doors, and I got to ask a few questions that I'd always wanted to know, or some of the technical stuff, or just, but I also am friends with his engineer, with everyone else in his camp now, so I could like, so what was the reverb used on blah 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 blah, just trying to do, because that was one of the things on Love to Love You Baby. I wanted to kind of like, I had the original parts, but I wanted to add some bits and kind of try to still make things sound like they were from, modernized, but still kind of tied to the original tracks. So like the amount of delay between like the stereo imaging of the synths, because that original, the original Giorgio synth was only, it was only eighth notes playing, and the thing that made it the 16th notes was actually a delay panned to one side, and so it's not perfect. So when you hear one channel of it, it sounds really weird and off. So I remember just kind of doing really, really deep analysis of all the engineering behind all that stuff.
No, I think it's cool. I love that track too. I don't get to play it as much now because I don't play at the spot that I played it at all the time, but it was a spot here in town that I got to play like cool music at. And I actually think that track like is still like, it sounds like current still, like it's still got a cool
thanks.
vibe
I'm gonna
to
bring
it.
I literally I forget about that one, and I want to break that out, because that really, I liked it, and they liked it on the album. They started the album with it, so it was cool.
You've already accomplished a lot in your career. Is there anything that you hope to accomplish still, or do you have anything that you want to do still?
Staying employed. I mean, there's always going to be, of course there's always stuff. The one thing that I wasn't doing, a long time, when, I spent a lot of time remixing and producing. I wasn't writing as much as I wanted, so I wanted to write more. And I still really love producing. I like producing groups and musicians, and even stuff that's non-dance. Like I really love working on rock records or alternative records and things like that. So I definitely want to hopefully get in some situations where I could be doing more of that. I definitely would do another film or two. That was a really, really cool experience. I hope I get a chance to do some more. Yeah, a lot of it is just like with work. A lot of times, like it doesn't have to be one particular thing. I just like to keep doing stuff, and I like to do stuff that challenges me. Like I definitely like to be in a studio and just kind of be somebody goes, hey, there's this thing that somebody is wondering if this could happen, or maybe there's a way that this could, but nobody else can do it. And I'm like, ooh, I love hearing those words because then it's like, all right, well, I'm gonna find a way to do it. I like solving musical puzzles, and so it's never just like I want to make the same thing over and over and I want to headline EDC. It's like, yeah, that'd be cool, but I just like working. I like creating. I love collaborating with other people, but I like collaborating in the room with other people, and like I said, working whether it's singers or musicians or bands. I'm doing a thing right now. This isn't even promo, but something that I started doing live on my stream that's developing into something else. So because I come from being a musician first and foremost, and because I came out of jazz first, I've always wanted to have the ability to do more spontaneous playing and creation, where you're able to kind of like make tracks or do tracks, or just like you said earlier, like having the technology to like start to manipulate things or create things on the fly. And I've taken that one step further, and I've started doing some live streams with this musician that I found here, Michael Pollard, and he's an amazing, brilliant keyboardist. And we started doing some live jams on the stream where I just start playing. We don't talk, we don't discuss, we don't rehearse anything. He sets up a couple keyboards. I run his keyboards through. I don't know if you can see my. So I run his keyboards through a sub mixer over there. Goes through. I've got a whole bunch of guitar effects pedals and stuff over there, and then coming up through here as another deck. So it'll be all live music stuff, and then I've got my live stuff that I'll play, and then I'll just start to. I'll hit play, and we'll start to. We'll just start to kind of jam. So it's a mixture of like jam band meets whatever, but it's all rooted in house music and electronic music, and we'll just start and we'll end up playing for like 3 hours, and we don't even I don't tell them what key, I don't do anything, because we're both reacting to what the other person's doing. So if he starts playing something, I start feeding off it and doing stuff, and then it just has been this whole level of creativity that I'm getting like crazy enjoyment out of it. So we've been in the studio having some of these jam sessions off camera, and then each one of them is turning into a track. So we've been working on a full EP that's like pretty much done, and each one of them was just literally a one evening where he came over. We had no idea. I started either just futzing with something or playing, or he started playing some riff, and I would start recording things and doing live sound design, and then or I'm playing something and then he's reacting off it, and by the end of each one we have like these full pieces of music, and I really want to expand on that a bit with maybe there's some other musicians or things like that, because it's like the spontaneity of jazz and a little bit of jam band, but it's not as pretentious as jazz, and I'm not trying to just like, hey, look how many notes I can play here, because I want it to still be a groove in it, but I want the journey and the vibe of like what a DJ does, or what you get from like a really cool mixtape or something like that, and that has been exciting me immensely. So I really hope that I can do more of that and try to somehow do some of that live, because it's just creatively it's been just like giving me such a thrill. That's been really fun.
You gonna get Warren to come over and slap the bass?
I know. I tried it. Well, I've been trying to. I had him come over to a jam I did like with Frankie, who's my buddy Frankie, was a DJ who also is a really good drummer. And Warren came over one of the nights, and he could hang. He's definitely getting better.
I feel like if people like live jazz, I could see why that this would totally work in a live setting.
Yeah. But not being such a thing, but not being like, all right, you play a solo, now you play a solo, now you play a solo. Now let's all play something that sounds like 4 different records. Like but it's the whole, we're creating at the same time, and we're reading each other and feeding off each other. I mean, it'd be similar, like, you know, when a DJ's, two turntablists, you got Qbert and, whatever, somebody else, like, sitting there like invisible scratch pickles, and it's not a routine, but they're kind of just like grooving and vibing, but somebody's listening to what the other one's doing and they instantly are reacting, which then makes the other one react. And so doing that, but making it still sound like music and still take these journeys. And I'll tell you, man, when that kind of thing works, like there's nothing better. It's really, really, really fun. And we had the first single of that project just came out, and then we have, like I said, we have a whole EP that's kind of like ready to go. We're just gonna do one.
What's the name of that?
The first single is called Intergalactic Seashore, and it's Chris Cox and Michael Pollard, and Michael is spelled with a Y. And it literally was just a session of us just hanging out in the studio, and at the very end of it, there's all these weird, I'm just manipulating all these effects, and it just starts sounding like all this it just sounds like, it's like you're listening to Sirius XM chill, but in space, if that makes sense. And it's a really cool ass track. And at the very end of it, Michael's like, I don't know, it sounds like some kind of like intergalactic seashore. And I'm like, that's the title. And it's just, I don't know, it's just been really, that's been really gratifying. And it's definitely good headphone music too, because there's some trippy stuff going on.
You're speaking all my language right there. I'm definitely gonna play that.
Yeah.
Check it out for sure.
It's been good. It's not, I don't know, it's not for the clubs, maybe an open-minded club, but or maybe like a transformational festival kind of thing. But it's like it's been creatively just giving me so much enjoyment lately doing some other stuff and just kind of exploring other stuff.
That's awesome.
I love that.
So I have one more question, and it's not the most serious question ever, but it's a question we ask everybody. What is the best non-curse word, one-word insult?
Oh, all right, a non-curse word insult. I guess it would have to be depending on how it's delivered, because of course, anytime I think of non-curse word insults, I think of like a Yosemite Sam rant. Like, oh, sorry. But one that if I'm in front of, say, kids or something, and like if you're like, I don't know, hammering something, you hit your song or hit your thumb, and you can't swear, but you want to swear. Corn nuts. Corn nuts is a good one. I don't know if it'd be an insult to somebody. Like, I mean, I guess you could be like, "What are you looking at, corn nuts?" I think it could be used as an insult. You don't plug that there, corn nuts.
Corn nut. There you have it.
Yeah, corn nut. I think it's even better. Keep it pluralized for even just one person. I even just make
makes you even crazier.
Somebody trips. You're like, yeah, nice shoes, corn nuts.
So good. I love it.
Was that so that was the quick response action ones. Now we're gonna get into the long questions. Now we're gonna do the essay questions. That was the true or false section.
That's exactly right. Now that the rapid fire is over, we can get into the long segments. And I know we want to talk a little more about production with you. I have another great produced video that I'm going to play real quick for you to hear. So here we go.
Hey, what is up, Drew and Fuse? It is Mark McGrath from the band Sugar Ray, off the charts, but always in our heart. Hey, Drew and Fuse, when I'm not busy being the handsome, dashing fella that I am, at least had a few good years in the 90s, I work on music, like writing hit #1 songs like Fly and Every Morning. Maybe someday you'll have a hit. Let's talk production. Let's talk inspiration. Actually, you know what? I don't even like Drew and Fuse. Who are they?
Oh, bravo. That's beautiful. Mark McGrath. Nice pull.
We're bringing in some big guns. This is season 2.
You definitely are. The greatest thing. So first of all, I love that the guy kind of like, takes the piss out of himself. But but they did even back their second album. Do you remember the title of their second album?
1459.
1459, which was so brilliant because it was a reference to Andy Warhol's thing. Everyone will someday have 15 minutes of fame, and they're like, "Yeah, we're famous, but it's about to end." And the fact that it was just so prophetic, and they kind of, weren't so up their own. That's very nice, nicely done.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. Me and Drew both love Less Than Jake, but I listened to the lead singer of Less Than Jake, Krista Makes, his podcast. He had Mark McGrath on at one point, and this is what I wanted to say, and mention this to you because Mark, won Rock and Roll Jeopardy like 2 or 3 times, I think. And I think you're one person that knows music trivia enough to be on.
But I have a Rock and Roll Jeopardy story, and you just hit a nerve and a potential sore spot with me, because here's why. I was living in LA when Rock and Roll Jeopardy became a thing, and I auditioned for Rock and Roll Jeopardy. And it was my dream ever since I was a kid. I'd always wanted to be on a game show. And I'm like, a game show about music? Like, holy crap, sign me up. And so I went down to Sony Culver. I signed up. This is like, don't remember what, it was like early 2000s, I think, whenever it aired. And I tried to become a contestant. And I signed up for everything, and then you get picked, and you make it down certain tiers to where you then, and I got picked. I kept getting picked, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna get on Rock and Roll Jeopardy. This is so good. So the final stage was you had to go in front of the the production staff, and then you had to actually play a game in the studio with other people that were also trying to get on the show. So I made it to that level, and I was kicking ass. I had like a great, and they wanted to have an interesting little anecdote story, and I talked about when I was a roadie for the Ramones for one day, and I was like, had all these like cool little things, and every time they were doing, and then I played the game, didn't miss any questions. I was really good. And then I was waiting for my, my call back to tell me when I was taping and when I got the show, and it never happened. And I knew somebody else that I ran into that day, and I never got picked. And I was like, what the heck? I did so good. Trying to think about anything. And about 3 weeks after the fact, I was talking to a neighbor of mine who was like a struggling actress. And she was like this struggling actress. And then, really cool, became friends. We'd see each other at the gym. And she would host these monthly, it was like a brunch at a coffee shop that I would always go to anyway. And it was for a bunch of out-of-work actors to kind of network. And so I was telling her the story about, I auditioned for Rock and Roll Jeopardy. I totally thought I was going to get it. And she goes, oh, yeah. Karen felt really bad that you couldn't do it. And I said, Karen, who's Karen? She goes, Karen, she was there at the thing. She's on the production staff. She's one of the associate producers. I said, who is this person? What do you mean? And she goes, well, you know her. She comes to my events all the time. She couldn't pick you because she knew you. And I'm like, what person? Who are you talking about? Who is this Karen person? Like, she could have literally walked out nude. I would have never known who this person was. And apparently she remembers seeing me at one of these events, and therefore she couldn't pick me because we were friends, even though I had no idea who this person was. And I never got picked because this person recognized me, and I never got picked. And I remember during that season, I watched 3 episodes, and I didn't miss a single question, and then I just couldn't watch the show anymore. I was so distraught. I was like, I should have been on this show. So that's my Rock and Roll Jeopardy story.
Oh, that sucks. That's terrible.
So I'm happy
That's
Mark
awful.
McGrath did so great on that and had so many hit records. Good for him.
I never watched this, but who was the host of that?
It wasn't Trebek. It was somebody else, and I can't remember because it was on VH1, and I remember the prize was $5,000, and I can't remember who the actual host was because was it? Oh, I didn't know that. It would have been before he was doing Survivor, right, or whatever he did. Yeah, it was somebody I didn't know. That's for sure. But I remember being on the set of Jeopardy and having the little thing and getting to do all the, it's like Soul Asylum, and what is Soul Asylum?
I'm pissed now too, and now I'll never watch it again either.
Oh, I was so crushed. My dream was to be on either that or when MTV had remote control. That was like their game show. I just always wanted to be on a music game show. And then I tried out with a friend because whenever they did Beat Shazam, I had like 5 people hit me up about wanting to be a partner contestant for Beat Shazam, and I ended up going through the process and made it like 4 rounds, and then never got the final call. So
That's a tough one to swallow for sure. Yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask you production wise is I know you did a remix for ABBA, Gimme Gimme Gimme, in like 2018.
no,
And
I
now
did not.
I thought you did.
That is a miscredit that I see all over the. Oh no, not ABBA. Sorry. I did Cher covering "Gimme Gimme Gimme" for her All ABBA Covers album, but it's not ABBA. Yeah,
Okay.
It was Cher. It was Cher again. That was the other, I was trying to remember earlier. Yeah, that was the other Cher I did. So yeah, it was Cher because of the Mamma Mia movie. She did an entire album of ABBA covers, and I remixed "Gimme Gimme Gimme," which was her, but it was her version, not ABBA's version.
One of the things, it's crazy. We've talked about it a few times recently, how big all the ABBA music is right now.
Well,
Like,
because
Gimme-
it's so good, number one, and then it was good, but the movie Mamma Mia really revitalized it, and then Madonna sampling Gimme 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 for Hung Up kind of gave it another boost, and then I know their big show and the big hologram show. But yeah, there's something about that song in particular has had a whole new life because I played a thing at Zook here in LA or in Vegas like 2 weeks ago, and I remember asking the sound guy. It was like the same night Zed was on, and there was like another opening DJ, and I was like, all right, dude, what's the song that you're sick of hearing right now? And he goes, gimme, gimme, gimme. He goes, every single DJ. He goes, I hear that song 3 times a night. Every DJ, whether it's a corporate version, they play the original version. All the EDM DJs are playing like this remix that's out, and that song is just everywhere right now.
I was just in a college town visiting our good friend DJ Donk. We just went to one of the old college bars, and I must have heard the DJ play 4 different ABBA songs. And
Wow.
I mean,
that's
and
you
the whole place was going crazy.
well deserved. I mean, they're amazing records. Amazing production, amazing writing. They deserve to be heard over and over, as opposed to some other things which should never be heard.
It's the Swedish. I've heard.
Yes. They've made a few records in that wonderful country. Yeah, they got a few talented people there.
Yep.
One thing I would like to ask too about production and just in general, this can go production wise and just DJ career in general. If you had any advice for your younger self going back, or if you would do anything a little different.
For myself, I would definitely. All right, young Chris, let me tell you 2 things. So 2 things. Probably not be so fussy on every single little track. So like if I'm working on a drum line and I've got all these different percussion lines and I'm spending tons of time getting every little sound right and every little groove right, and just spending a lot of time on records, and probably spent more time on some things that maybe didn't need those extra details, and kind of being really proud of trying to make like really pristine productions, whereas maybe I didn't need to spend as much time on some of those things. And I definitely would have told myself to write more. I should have written a lot more instead of just producing and remixing, or take, for every remix session, write a couple songs off of that session. But definitely, those would be my first 2 main things. Was kind of like, realize what's the most important thing about a track or about a thing. And it was something I got a little from Giorgio, but it didn't really sink in until way later. But there's strength in the strength in a song is the melody, and so whereas when you're a programmer and a technician and an engineer, you'll fuss on a bunch of little things that may not make a difference when you step back and you're just listening to the thing, and it's playing in somebody else's car, or it's playing on somebody's desktop computer in the other room, and you're not hearing every little nuance and every little thing in the stereo field. You're just hearing, all right, what's the melody? What's the main important part of that record? And that's the thing I think I've learned, is to step out of the productions every now and then, and just kind of realize what is the important takeaway of this thing, whether it's the hook, whether it's the melody, whether it's the vocal, whether it's just the overall thing, that some of the stuff under the hood isn't as important as I thought it was.
Yeah. It's a great answer.
Yeah. Is there any advice, a quick advice that you would give to our listeners or anybody that might be wanting to get into more production work? Is there anything that you would suggest, or just any advice for them?
Yeah, one thing I try to tell people all the time is to, when people are first starting or just getting a thing, you get one piece of gear, or maybe you only had 2 keyboards, and you would kind of learn everything or do everything you could about that. And even just with DJing, if you get one piece of equipment, you spend a ton of time of it, you learn every single thing about that equipment. And nowadays, you get a program like Logic or Ableton or whatever, and you have a million plugins with a million presets and a million everything. And what happens is you get overwhelmed trying to do many things, and you have no idea what a lot of the things are doing or even why they're there. Like, some people will get Logic and there's a bunch of great presets, but they'll record a vocal and then they'll just start applying presets, rap, male, vocal, and they'll just wonder why it doesn't sound good. Well, it wasn't made for your voice specifically. So what happens is people aren't spending enough time getting to know one thing really well. You could make an entire track with just one synthesizer. One synthesizer can do your bass and your lead and everything else that you would want, or even just one sampler. Guys made whole records with just, a 1200 or just an MPC or just one piece of gear. And until you take the time to know what some of the things are doing, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you can have a million different plugins and have a million different, or whatever, 1,000 different tracks, and all of it's going, and it's just going to sound like garbage, because all you maybe needed was that one thing, or just to take that one plugin, just take one plugin and go, I'm going to limit myself to just this for the next month, and I'm going to make a track where I use only this one plugin for every single track. But by the end of that month, I'm going to know what this instrument does. And then when you're working on another project in the future and you need something, or you hear something in your head, or you hear a track that you want to replicate, you know how to carve it out of that one thing. We talked earlier about people watching YouTube videos and stuff, which is great to learn a couple things. But until you learn the essence of how something is made, or why something is made, or why you would use that tool, it doesn't really mean anything. So limit yourself to the tools, to just a few tools at a time, until you actually know what that tool does, and then learn something else all the way, So it just really helps sharpen your things, because also once you learn one synthesizer all the way through, well, synthesis is the same, if it's a Korg unit or a Roland unit or a Yamaha unit, or a Moog, all the different things are the same principles are being used, just in a different wrapper. So if you really, really get inside and learn everything about this one piece of gear, it applies to other things as well. So now you're more powerful. When you pull up a plugin, you go, oh, it looks different, it's laid out different, but I totally know how to make something out of this. And then you can be more powerful as a producer. And, the goal is to not get hung up by the gear and by the tools, but the goal is to just get ideas out as quickly as possible. And, when you're in the middle of battle, or it's the middle of night, and either you're on a deadline or you're just flowing, you don't want anything to stop you. You want to be able to generate ideas as quickly as they come to your head. So the faster you know stuff, or even with some people, just use one piece of gear. I remember back in the day, Robbie Rivera, he had his K2000 or K2500, just one sampler. That's the only piece of gear he used. He had one piece of gear that he made a whole bunch of amazing records on because he knew that one piece of gear inside out. Or Fatboy Slim, I remember him in the studio thing with him where he had 2 Akai S950 samplers, and that was it. He made all of his most legendary records on 2 samplers, and he just knew how to get everything out of those pieces of gear. And you don't need a bunch of stuff, and you don't need a bunch of plugins. Just learn, little small bites and learn them really well, and then grow from there.
I mean, that applies to so many different things that we've talked about this whole
sure.
session. But you just keep name dropping very little things, and I'm sorry, I have to geek out and just hear one of these stories. You just said, and you can take it wherever you want, but you just mentioned about roading for the Ramones one night, which is
Yeah, I was curious about that one too.
I was like, wait, under your tongue, under your breath, you're just gonna drop that on us? But then you
that's
also
so funny.
we're talking about like coffee shop stories with Giorgio, and you can do whatever you want. We could, the mic is yours, but I feel like you got some other stories, and that's what I want to hear. I want to hear these stories, right? So preach it to the DJs. Sorry, go learn, grab one thing. Chris has already broke it down for you, but I want to hear some of these crazy.
Okay, the
stories
Ramones thing is really fun. It's really funny because there's the story came about and how I remembered it. So I was looking up something where we were talking about concerts in Vegas, and a friend found a thing and it's like, are you aware that Zeppelin played Vegas? And I'm like, they did? Because like the Beatles played Vegas once as well. And we found this old article of 20 or 25 shows that like majorly like the most important rock shows to ever hit Vegas. And you probably never knew that they came to Vegas. We found out there was a venue, used to be an ice rink very close to like where I live, that was a venue for a couple of years in the early 70s, and Zeppelin played there, and the Doors played there, and all these like legendary people came to Vegas and played there, and it was like, cool. And then I'm looking down the list, and I see in the top 10, I see this thing, the Ramones at Moyer Student Union at UNLV, and I told my friend, I'm like, oh shit, I was a roadie for that. And they were like, what? So what happened was I was going to UNLV. I was living in the dorm, so I was always on campus, and I was a DJ on at the radio at KUNV, and then I was also in a fraternity, and so I was always either in the music building or the student union or the dorm at UNLV. Like I was just there 24/7, and the Ramones were coming on a concert, and they were playing at the Student Union Ballroom. It was like this legendary venue. Actually, you can see the Student Union Ballroom in Viva Las Vegas. Like they'd shoot scenes from Elvis like dancing on that stage. And so the Ramones were there, and I knew who they were, but it didn't have the same impact as like what they do now, because I'm like, oh yeah, the Ramones, yeah, I've heard their records, I know the Hey Ho, Let's Go and all that. And there was hardly anybody sitting around like the union, because it was like Friday afternoon and most people had gone home, but I was sitting there with one of my good friends, Ray, and some guy just walks through, and he kind of looked like he had a British accent, and he was kind of all dressed up, and he's like, does anyone want a roadie for the Ramones? You get to see the show for free. And I just like, I will. I didn't even ask questions. And my friend was like, I go, come on, man, let's go. This will be fun. This will be fun. He's like, I got to go home. I think I have to study. Like, he was just like frightened by this person. And so he was like, all right, come with me. And there was like maybe like 4 or 5 people that went out to the back of the student union, and there was just a truck with a bunch of gear on it, whatever. And it's like, okay, we need to get this in here. And it was like the amps and you're rolling and things. And I remember there was this one kid, he was very, very goth. He was in like this weird, like full green paratrooper jumpsuit, and it was Vegas, and even though it was like the beginning of December, it was still hot. And I just remember he had makeup on and eyeliner, and he was like sweating. I just remember seeing, because he was kind of like melting as we were working on the day. But I was like, yeah, it's a band. Oh my god, I like being around any kind of band. I like being around stage, and I knew this was a big national band, a big worldwide band. So it's like, cool. So we start wheeling all the stuff in. The band isn't there, but we start kind of like, the guys saying where everything needs to get set up, and so I'm kind of like just moving stuff around and going, this is really cool, like a rock show, cool. And it's like my hometown, like this is my my union where I'm always at anyway. So we set up all the gear, and then we're given passes, and we get to go like backstage, and that's where the first time I ever saw like craft services set up, and I see all these like buckets of like beer and like sodas and all this like like snacks set out. I was like, wow, that's so cool. They get like free drinks and everything. That's really cool because I'm literally like a freshman in like college and have no money, and I'm just like, and they're like, you can take something from there, but you can't have anything from there. That's for the band. It's like, okay, and then they go, all right, and so the show's getting ready to come, and then the band comes in, and I'm like, oh wow, that's cool. But they're kind of intimidating because they're all you know what they look like, and it's not like we're friends, and they obviously aren't trying to make friends with the hired help, so they're just kind of doing their thing, getting ready for the show, and so the guy kind of like whisks us out, but he says, all right, well you can stay here for the show. And so there was the stage, then there's the area where security is, where there's like steps going up, and then there's a barricade, then there's the crowd. So I got to stay where the security was. So I'm like right underneath like, Johnny like playing guitar. And I knew, like I said, I knew a couple of songs, but I didn't know all their stuff. So I'm just kind of there next to all these security guards, and I'm just kind of like leaning on the thing, and suddenly he's like, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the band just like rips into it. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And so they and every song finishes, and literally they finish the song, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they just go, and it was like over and over and over. And like at one point I'm just kind of like seeing the board kind of like finishing, and I'm just like, okay, this is really cool, but I still don't know most of the songs. And then suddenly I recognize like a couple of songs, and Joe, so I'm like underneath like one player that I could see the other two, but I'm like literally I could reach out and grab the guitar neck if I wanted to, so I'm like right underneath it, and Joey says like a few things here and there, but not really much. And then it was like I don't even know how long the show lasted because the songs are so quick. They played a whole bunch of them, and then the show was done. Like the show was done. So then I stuck around because they said afterwards we had to move all the stuff. Well, now at the beginning there was 5 guys, and at the end everyone else took off except me and the melting paratrooper goth guy. Like we were the only ones to load up, and everyone else was gone. And it was like, oh man, that sucks, all those other guys. And so I was like, okay, well, let's go. And so I remember me and him, like this kid, we didn't even really talk, but we're like ended up like we're pushing the amps, and I don't think he had much strength to him, poor fella. And so we're pushing all the amps up the ramps and everything and getting things loaded in. And I'm kind of having this weird little fantasy. It's like, well, if I do a good enough job, maybe I just get to go to the next concert. Maybe they'll just throw me in the truck and I get to go hang out with the band for a while and get a free beer or something. But then at the end, it was like, all right, thanks, mate. This is great. Thanks, thanks. And then that was it. They were gone. But I got my one day as a roadie with the Ramones.
That's amazing.
It's so amazing.
I forgot about it for years, and then I remembered it years later when I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that happened.
I feel like with the Ramones, you don't really have to know their songs, right? Because they are
Exactly.
really fucking catchy,
Oh yeah, for sure.
And melting paratrooping goth guy might be become one of our
Is that a screen name?
our mascots. Our mascots, like it's so good.
We got a call from melting paratrooping goth guy. We're gonna see who he's roadieing for today.
Exactly. Who knows? Maybe that guy became Al Jurgensen from Ministry. I mean, who knows?
It's so awesome. I don't want to take all your time, but I would love to hear any more stories if you got something, or if we got another segment, whatever you guys are feeling.
There's one story. I'll tell you a story of like polite. Is this really polite regret? I guess. So around mid 2010, 2011. So I toured with Perry Farrell for a couple of years with Jane's Addiction. We were like basically live collaborators. So somebody that was like his manager kind of said, hey, they're trying to do something for Coachella. They're trying to get a song mixed for the live show, and the person that they got to do it can't really pull it off. Can you give it a shot? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And so Perry wants to come by the studio and like talk to you about it, whatever. And so I thought like, All right, cool. And like most things, like especially in LA, like you have a meeting and you talk about work, and then you eventually get to work. And especially when I do, like I never really do things on the fly. So I'm kind of nervous because I'm a fan of Jane's, and I saw Jane's back, in the very beginning, and he showed up to the studio, and he's like really sharply dressed, whatever. And so he's like, hey, so what do you think on the project? And I said, well, I kind of envision, because I'd already listened to everything. And I said, oh, we could kind of do this and this and this. He's like, all right, cool, man, let's do it. And he sits down on the chair, and I'm like, all right, now? He goes, yeah, man, let's do it. And so I was like, okay. And so I had to mix the whole thing, like literally right there, like come up with parts and all that, and just kind of like at the end of the session. But at the end of the session, they were like really happy, and they ended up performing it at Coachella. It was like the next week. And so I remember just kind of talking to his people.
Wait,
and I said,
I'm
well,
sorry.
hey.
What year is this?
It was 2010, I think. 2011. Yeah,
Okay.
2010, I think. And so then I was like, Lollapalooza was coming up, and I was like, hey, maybe there's a chance you guys could, put me on Lollapalooza. I mean, I'll take a 2 PM in the parking lot slot. It doesn't matter, I'll play, anywhere. And his manager said, hey, Perry was thinking that'd be really cool. Actually, he'd like to play with you. Is that cool if you guys did a thing together? And I'm like, yeah, sure.
God.
Let's do that. And so for the next couple of years, I got to tour and play with Perry. So, then he and I did Coachella the next year, and we did, and I got to play Lollapalooza Chicago a couple times, and Lollapalooza in Chile, 2 years in Chile, 2 years in Brazil, like the first years they were doing it, and I got to go kind of live like the rock star life for a couple of years, which was like really fun and just really good, and get in, did some stuff in the studio with his wife, and some of this is actually documented. There was an TV series. I think they did one season called Married to Rock, and it was about a bunch of rock star wives, and his wife is one of the characters, and so they document some stuff from one of the Lollapaloozas that we were at, because Eti was going to sing during, and they made that a storyline, and they're following and shooting us and all that. So where was I go? I was going somewhere with this. Oh yeah. So anyway, we became friends. We did a lot of really cool shows together. Did some cool stuff. It was just like a really really good hang. And then a couple years after that, James was touring, and so I hit him up, and they were coming to Vegas, and they were doing the whole Ritual De La Habitual album, and so hit him up, and they're like, oh yeah, come to the show, and so. I'm at the show, and I'm just kind of like watching the band in VIP, and I look over and I see Tommy Lee from Motley Crue, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, what's up, Tommy? I'd seen him before at some of the dance things. He'd been around, and then I look over and then I see Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins, and I'm like, oh shit, this is really kind of cool. Like, and they're all just kind of in the same area, and then Mark from the Killers, and so it was just this kind of like moment, like, wow, there's a whole bunch of people there. Well, then I had a backstage pass, so afterwards they had me, I went backstage with the band, and so I'm, talking to Perry, and we're just bullshitting, whatever. And then there was suddenly this thing where somebody was going to take a picture, and so the band gets together, and they pull in Tommy, and they pull in Billy, and Perry sees me, and he's like, Chris, motions for me to come over and get in the picture. And there was like kind of somebody standing there, and I was just like, I couldn't quite negotiate. And I was like, and I had my camera out. I was going to take a picture of this thing. And I was like, no, that's cool, man. I'll take a picture. And so I took a couple of pictures instead of getting in this picture with like, entire all-star 90s alt-rock thing. And I'm like, oh, man, that was such a cool. And I have pictures. I have the pictures that I took of that, and I'm like, oh man, I should have been in that. That was really dumb. But I literally was being polite because I didn't want to like mow somebody else down trying to fucking, hey guys.
You totally deserve to be in that. I mean,
I know I could Photoshop myself in it.
To contribute to this is my first concert I ever went to, I went to like a bar and saw a local band, but my first like real concert was Lollapalooza. It was Lollapalooza 93. Cool.
When it was still touring, or when it was only in Chicago? Because it used to be a tour.
When it was like, Yeah, this is 93, so way before when it was the tour.
Who was the headliner? Was it Jane's or was
Well,
it Red Hot Chili Peppers?
actually, the opening is what's even more fascinating about it. Is Rage Against the Machine was the opening band, and then
okay.
Tool played
Then
second.
that was year 3. That was the third year. Yeah, because I saw
Yeah.
the first 4, and that was the third year of it. Yeah, that was great when it was a tour. That was so much
Yes. Wanted to tell the listeners, for people that don't know Jane's Addiction, we have younger people on here. Jane's Addiction and Perry Farrell is the guy who started Lollapalooza in the first place. And so that is an amazing story. And, that's really cool. I wish I could have saw Jane's at that, but I think Primus and Arrested Development and
Yeah.
was on that show.
I think it was Metallica on that one, or were they on the following year? Because I know Metallica got added on one of those years. Because I know on the first 4, Tool was definitely the up and like the real heavy band of the moment. Yeah. Because I went to the first one was Jane's. The second one was crazy. Chili Peppers headlined. Ice Cube was in it. Ministry was in it. Soundgarden was in it, but literally the second band of the day, like because they were brand new, was Pearl Jam, and I'll tell you something really cool that I got to experience. So Pearl Jam was the second band of the day at Lollapalooza 2. And they just had their first single was out, like Alive had been out, Even Flow was just coming out as a brand new single. It was on MTV and all that. So flash forward 20 years later, I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Lollapalooza Brazil is hitting for the first time, and the headliner is Pearl Jam. And I'm down there playing with Perry. We played on the dance stage. And so I had my all artist badge. And so I'm like, oh my God, this is cool. Like 20 years later, there was this band, and to see what they've accomplished, or maybe 25 years, however long it had been, I'm now getting to see this. Well, I had this pass that got me anywhere. So when Pearl Jam got ready to play, I just got to go to the side of the stage and stand right there where there's like the drum riser and everything, and I'm standing on that, and they were playing for 110,000 people because they hadn't been there in something like 20 years. And the Brazilians love concerts and they love to sing. So I'm watching from the viewpoint of the band, 110,000 people sing every one of their songs so loud that you can hardly hear the band. And I'll tell you,
and you're on stage.
I'm basically on. I mean, I'm way off stage, but yeah, I'm kind of watching that. And then I did the same thing the following year with the Foo Fighters, and I have video of some of that stuff, and it's I'll tell you that's some of the weird stuff about my journey in the industry of just getting to experience some really, really cool things with some people that I've never stopped being a fan, and so to have those moments where you're like, oh my God, this is really cool. All right, just be cool. Try not to don't be a fan because you're here. So just work it, do your thing that you're supposed to do. But it still is every now and then I get a few moments where it's just like, okay, that was really cool. That was a really cool.
Dude, amazing stories. We're talking so much traveling of you basically being everywhere. Fuse, should we hit him with some travel questions? I don't know if you have any travel tips or any travel stuff you like.
I've got almost I've got 3.9 million miles on American Airlines. So
there we go.
I've logged a few miles in the sky. So
we're gonna play this clip.
Great Scott! Hey there, Drew and Fuse! It's me, Doc Brown! Quick, jump in the DeLorean! We need to get this episode up to 88 miles per hour. Now, hit the flux capacitor, and let's travel to the future!
That's amazing that you got Christopher Lloyd to reshoot that entire scene for your show. That's awesome.
It's crazy. We just called him up, and he was like, yeah, no problem. I got you guys.
And then he's like, let me get Zemeckis on this. Hey, these fellas want to use that. No problem, guy. No problem. They pulled the old sets out. They got it all set up. That's awesome. That shows where you guys are ballers, man.
We make this show makes a ton of money. We have a budget We have
You
a
are
budget.
Hollywood.
Through the roof. Yeah.
We got to pull the big guns out for our big guests, and this has been an amazing episode. So let's talk some travel tips. I mean, with that kind of mileage that you're talking about, you have to have some tips for people of how to pack or airlines to do or anything you got.
Okay. Number one tip that will save you a lot of headache. Don't be an asshole. Don't be an asshole to gate agents and to people that work for the plane. They're just doing a job. They're just doing their job. And even though you think that person has it out for you and they want you to stick you in that middle seat because they don't like you, they just want to get through their day. And the amount of time I've seen people like just be real shitty to people that are just trying to get through their job. And so then, and the minute you come through with the attitude of like, I need this, or why won't you do this for me? You could see that the dynamic completely changes. But if you talk to somebody as a working person and you're talking to another person that's just doing their job, you will notice a completely different dynamic. So, I try to be somewhat personable and not, just, how's your day going? How's it going? Oh, I'm just finishing up this job. I'm trying to get home. Hey, I noticed, I'm stuck in this middle seat. Is there anything that we can do to And more often than not, I've always had things, turn my way with travel because it's just the way that you deal with people, and it can be used not with travel, but just with anything. But there really is a thing. The minute you feel like you're more important than anyone else in that airport, then you've already lost the game. And the other thing is also, you got to relax. Like you can't stress about things that you have no control over. So if there is going to be a delay or a change or whatever, like once I get to the airport and I check through security, once I'm in security, I don't stress about anything because at that point, nothing is in my control. I just have to make sure I'm at the gate and listen for them to board. But at that point, if you're like, oh my God, the thing's delayed, it's just, there's nothing you can do about it. So if you get yourself all anxious about it, you're going to have a crappy day. So just always have, a spare battery, always be prepared to not have a plug anywhere, always be, prepared with some little snack in your bag or something so you don't hit low blood sugar, moment, and just realize that ultimately the planes will always move. And if they don't, then be nice and try to get a room out of somebody. But just always remember, it's not all about you. And the minute you try to do that, well, you're just kind of being an asshole to everyone else. Like everyone else has got an important, and there's other people that maybe they're in a hurry and maybe they have a way bigger emergency. So you just try to always have decent manners and be a decent person, and you'll have much better results.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah. Anything else with with traveling?
Well, just very. I remember the first year I really started touring, and everyone would, the promoters would just look for the cheapest airfare or whatever. And so at the beginning of my first year of heavy touring, I didn't have enough. So on like 8 different airlines, I didn't have enough miles for any kind of status or any kind of free ticket on anything. So I learned real quick about the value of picking an airline and doing everything on that airline, even if it costs more. Because now the thing you get all the time when you do a search and you see how do I get to Columbus, from Vegas, and Spirit's going to come up and Frontier's going to come up and all this, but because there's so many extras that all the things put in and they never factor in. They keep you get these bare bones fares because they want to be top of the search engine. So don't be so hung up on the price, because ultimately you're going to end up paying more anyway if you want to bring a bag or if you want to pick a seat or if you want to do whatever. So it's kind of more important to just pick an airline loyalty, because by the second year, if you are doing a lot of traveling, when you start getting a special phone number that you can call if there's a problem, when you start getting a free upgrades and things like that, or you start getting in the lounge, and it makes all the difference in the world, because once you really start grinding miles, you get stuck in Chicago O'Hare and it's going to be an 8-hour delay, to know that you can go in the lounge and actually get some work done or eat or, crash out in a chair and get a couple hours sleep. It makes all the difference of when you show up at a gig and you've actually, you're pulled together and you're not just a wrecked mess. And there's really something to just planning for just about anything that can go wrong, and just acting accordingly and being ready to just adapt quickly to things.
Yeah.
Totally. That's something that we've been preaching on the show a ton. It's just take whatever your favorite airline is that you enjoyed, pick it, and stick with it, because,
Yeah,
it
because
does
especially
make
if
a
you're
big
not
difference.
living in a major area, you got to look at okay, when I was living in LA, everyone had a big hub there, so it was great. But now that I live in Vegas, okay, not a lot of people have hubs here, so depending on where I'm going to fly, I'm going to have to stop somewhere. So if I'm still with American, I'm going to have to go through Dallas if I'm with, or Chicago. If I'm, I'm moving over to I've been moving over to Delta, so I got to do a lot of Atlanta now, or Salt Lake. And so you kind of look at the maps, and you could see where all the little lines go in. And if you go, okay, if that's on the way to where I want to be, if I know, if you got to do the same city all the time, that's one thing. But if you know that you always have to, you're in the Midwest and you always need to go west or whatever, just look at the flight maps so you can determine who goes there the most, because the more options you have on flights, the easier it is going to be if there's suddenly an emergency, or you finish a gig and you want to try to get home early, or so many things that can happen. And also which greatly affects the price too.
Totally.
Yeah, that's great advice. And we don't want to keep you too much longer, so real quick, we're gonna roll our new tech video, and then we'll talk a little bit about some new tech, and then we'll wrap. So I'll roll this real quick.
Hey, C3PO here. Drew and Fuse, I hear you love technology. What are some new gadgets you guys love? Oh no, R2, stop being so foolish. Let's hear about your new tech. Time to go. Master Luke needs me.
Oh, wow, man. Ever since Disney got Star Wars, they've really changed. Star Wars is such a sellout brand. They'll do everything. They'll do anything now. Yeah, first Mandalorian and now Drew and Fuse.
So good. So good. Well, you're first to see most of these. Your episode is definitely going to be first for a lot of these. They're all brand new.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad I could pop your cherry. So do you want to know what new tech is exciting for me?
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything.
I'll tell you my number. Just a couple weeks ago, I broke down because I was having an issue with my laptop, wasn't keeping up to what I was trying to do with the stream, and I got an M1 MacBook Pro, and OMFG, it is a complete game changer. The amount of processing on this thing is freaking amazing. Because before that, Fuse, you've been to my show. You saw I have a lot of stuff going on with my show here, and I've got an iMac on the other side of the studio, have another laptop here that I do all the stream and texting, and then I had my record box thing. Well, on the other iMac, I was running OBS. I was running. I started getting Resolume for videos and stuff like that. I took everything and put it all on the M1. I just started with just a couple things. Now I'm running OBS, record box, Resolume at full HD resolution at 60 frames, and still like a browser or something else, and a second monitor, and it's not even like dinging anything. Oh, and also the Blackmagic switcher, which is I've got it hidden under here, but the thing that's connecting all the different cameras and the audio and everything. No, it's underneath the sampler. Everything is kind of hidden.
Maybe you could drop and spec wise. What did you spec it out at?
Oh, I maxed it. I got whatever you can get. So let me see. I've got 64 gigs of memory, 2 terabyte SSD, and the most you could get for the GPU, the graphics card.
The M1 Max. Is it the
Yeah,
M1
yeah, yeah.
Max?
So I got the Apple M1 Max with 32 cores, and I'm telling you, I'm running so much crap on it now, and it's not even hiccuping. It's stunning, especially getting into Resolume, because one of the things I've started doing on the show is I started writing like little visual clips, and not just overlays, but little whatever dancing squirrels and other weird little things, and my logos and things. But some of these are alpha channels, and they're all 1080, and so I fire those from my launch pad over here. And so what I did is I set the launch pad as a MIDI controller, and each time I hit any one of those, it'll trigger a video clip for Resolume, and that's coming in as a layer. And that's coming in as a layer on my on OBS, and then at the same time I've got Rekordbox also going into the Rekordbox app. So I've got Rekordbox, Resolume, OBS, all running at the same time, and this thing is crazy. It handles everything. On top of it, the fact I want to do any production and make any original clips, the rendering time is crazy. Like if I want to make a visualizer for YouTube, one of the things I was using in After Effects, on my iMac, it was taking 5 hours to render. On this computer, it was taking 40 minutes. I mean, it's crazy how good it is. And and I went ahead and got a better one, because even though it was like a little more money than I wanted to spend, I know that it'll last me longer, because it's just amazing how many things it could handle. So that is my number one piece of tech. And then the other one that I got during streaming, but I'm turning more into bringing it for DJing, is a little Stream Deck. Or I mean, this is the bigger one, but I have a smaller one, because I've gotten so used to the Stream Deck for quick keys and things like that for DJing, because I've got basically like jumping into Rekordbox, I have different apps, so each of the different for jumping into Rekordbox, into OBS, and all these other things. But if you're a jock, one of the things that I don't ever want to do now that I'm on a laptop, I've got these sausage fingers, and I'll be in a hurry doing something, and all of these buttons are very close on a keyboard, on a laptop keyboard, to where you could accidentally hit stop, you could actually hit load. So like too many ways that you could mess up too quickly. But if you do a thing on a Stream Deck, if you want to quickly, you can do the things you can do for on your controller. So if I'm looping anything, if I'm doing anything, I'm doing all that here. But things like hitting find for a track, or loading things to a deck and all that, these buttons are so precise and they're so quick. And I have a little the little smaller one that I travel with just some things just mapped to Rekordbox, and I'm telling you, it's so quick, and it's so much more efficient, because I really don't want to touch the computer keyboard unless it's maybe just to type something. Just to type a title if I'm searching for something. But the Stream Deck as just a workflow device and to speed up things on other applications just besides streaming is really, really good.
I have one of those, and it's sitting in my drawer, and now I definitely have to pull it out and.
Oh, I'm telling you, man. Especially because I've seen the work you do, video and stuff. Yeah, you do a lot of stuff, because you can trigger it to do other things. You could trigger it to do.
Yeah.
You could have a whole list of things, or if you have lights that are on a network or different things like that, you can control so many things with it, because it just basically drives any smart device. So if you have Alexa tied to anything, you can have it tied in as a skill, or anything that you're using on your computer, or anything else tied to it. You can do like a crazy amount of things with it, and the buttons just feel good, and they respond really quick, and they're light up, and you can have video and stuff on the buttons. And so it's something that I didn't see as a great thing, and I just like it much better than touching the laptop, because just I've been in a hurry sometimes, and you go to hit whatever S, or go to hit Command F, and you accidentally hit the one thing, and then everything just suddenly stops, and you're like, oh god, I don't want to ever do that again. And so that's one thing that I've really fallen in love with the Elgato Stream Deck. And then
Yeah.
the other thing is just this particular controller. I love this so much. This is the Pioneer XDJ XZ, and it's overkill maybe for some things, but it's the build on it is so good, and especially with having the multiple channels, either multi-deck for multi-deck playing, but for me, I bring in other things on the other channels, so I'll mix on 2 to 3 decks, but then have all my analog stuff come in under one of the other decks, and then I can control them all. But I love the way the buttons feel. I love the EQ on the microphone, the display, like everything. It's a bit heavy. I wouldn't want to fly with it, but for corporate events in Vegas and things like that, it's just a beast. And I like having really robust gear because I get heavy-handed when I play, so I don't want to have like a really small little tiny controller that you can overshoot things. I want to have something that I can actually, it's tactile, but I can beat up on it a little bit.
Well, for the price, I mean, it's half the price of buying the exact same gear separately, and it's an all-in-one. So I mean,
and you could do a lot more with it too. I think creatively you can do a lot more with it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and especially having that screen, totally.
Yeah,
it's
it's beautiful.
Awesome.
That's my favorite tech right now.
We appreciate it, and we don't want to take up too much more of your time today. What we do want to do is ask you to kind of tell everybody where they can find your stuff once more, where they can find you streaming on Twitch, and what times and all that.
Yes, well, you can find me. Where can you find me? Well, I know on chriscox.net is the website, but my Twitch handle is Chris Cox Official, and I'm usually doing at least 2 to 3 days a week. Friday evening has been my Anthem Generation, my like 90s and early 2000s show. That's been the biggest show. And then Wednesday morning, and now I've been doing Thursday nights as well. Now that I've been touring more, I haven't been able to do weekend nights as much. So usually midweek, Twitch, twitch.tv/Chris Cox Official. Instagram, DJ Chris Cox. That's also the same for Twitter, and you can find all the other stuff around. And then Spotify, Apple Music. I've got you can just search my name, and then on SoundCloud, it's just Chris Cox on SoundCloud, and I've started doing a lot of downloads on SoundCloud, so I've got a lot of like over 200 free downloads now for some of the tracks that I've done, that either a special version that didn't come out, or the dub of this, or even just other stuff where they weren't making it available for some of the label stuff. So there's about 200 or plus free downloads on my SoundCloud thing if you just go in the links there.
Yeah, we'll include the links to everything below in the comments of the video and in the description of the Spotify.
Yeah. I have a link tree I can give you guys. It's a lot cleaner with all this stuff. But I appreciate you having me. I really like it. I'm a fan of both you guys. I obviously love DMS, and I'm a proud member. And like I said, I've seen you guys play, and I like your work, and I like you guys are good. It's definitely a good hang whenever we get to hang out at the convention or something. So, I look forward to the next time.
Well, I learned more today than I've even known about you. So it's been awesome having you on, man. It's so freaking cool, man.
It's my pleasure.
Cool. Yes. And make sure you go check out Chris's all of his stuff he plugged. Make sure you check him out on Twitch. His live streams are awesome. I've got to witness it firsthand. So if you're into, he does lots of live things while DJing, and like he was saying, we could catch the piano player on there maybe as well. What was his name once more?
Oh, Michael Pollard. Pollard is his last name. Michael with Mychael. Yeah, those are really special jams. I've actually got a few of those clips from some of those posted on my YouTube channel, Chris Cox TV. So there's a few things that are all just starting. Those are all just coming out now.
Awesome.
Love it.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for today. Until next time, we'll see you guys later. Peace.
Peace.